Hello students, welcome to week 6 for COM 565. This week we're looking at draft number 6 and there are a number of things required of us as we move through that. Our week 6 agenda tells us we're reading pertinent chapters in the text if needed. There is also an APA level heading levels handout in the week 6 agenda on Blackboard. It's important for you to go through at this point to make sure your headers and all of those little fine-tuned things are up to par with where they need to be. There are 2 videos in the Blackboard module that deal with APA formatting and things of that nature. They're very useful in ensuring that you've done this appropriately and correctly. We are finishing our meetings with me this week if you are scheduled in week 6 for your last meeting, and we are working on our final draft as we are compiling everything together into one draft for draft number 6. So draft number 6, let me explain to you what the point of this is. Drafts 1 through 5 included all of the information you needed to have a solid paper. We broke your paper down into 5 sections, beginning with your introduction purpose statement, ending squeezing your literature review and methodology in there, and then ending with your discussion and conclusion at some point. So what you're going to do now is draft 6 is a completed version of your paper. Virtually after this week, your paper will be completed. What we're doing in draft 6 is you're sending me a draft of your paper. I'm going through it with a fine-tooth comb. I'm making sure all of the important information from drafts 1 through 5 are presented in a narrative flow with proper transitions, APA headers, etc. I'm also looking for a completed APA format, cover pages, abstracts, references, appendices, anything like that that may have been included in your paper that are necessary. I'm looking to see that you've met the minimum page requirement. And ultimately, I'm looking at and saying if your paper is ready to move on to the next level. The next level is that you will be tweaking and doing any of those little last minute changes to it to get it ready for your defense. Your defense is at the beginning of week in the beginning of week 8, and in week 7 you're turning in your your completed paper, and so in week 8 you'll be on that Monday you will be presenting on your defense to the departmental faculty. And so in that, I need to make sure your paper is good to go. Draft 6 is that last chance that I can give you that pointed feedback that you needed to make sure that everything's there. It's that one chance that I can go through and say, look, I told them to do this in draft 1, fix this in draft 2. Did they do that? That's what I'm looking at. So don't look at it as an incomplete draft of your paper. This is your paper. This is just a chance for me to look at it before it's formally submitted. It's giving you that kind of heads up there in doing that. So do know that draft 6 is your paper. It's the full paper, and it's a chance for me to give you some good feedback that you need. We're transitioning from working on your paper to the editing stage of your paper, and then into your defense and presentation of your project. So as we look at editing the paper, it's important to keep in mind that editing is all about making it easier for the reader to read your work. The process involves 3 distinct things where you edit for structure, language and style, and you proofread. Proofread is the last step, and it's probably what you're most familiar with in terms of looking at I have to edit my paper and get it ready to turn in. Editing for structure helps the reader look at the logic of your argument, for flow and how it fits from more of a structural perspective. Language and style is looking for good use of grammar, consistency, and writing style, helping the reader concentrate on the content, not distracting from maybe any mistakes that there may be in the content. And then proofreading is getting rid of all the typos, inconsistent formatting, and all of those little things. So as we edit for structure, it's important to, at this point, look at your paper, compile all those drafts together, get all those transitions worked out, and then look at it and determine, does the paper flow well? Does this make logical sense as I read through it? Will this make logical sense to somebody that hasn't been involved with the paper intimately? Because remember, I'm giving you feedback, but I've also been there every step along the way with you, intimately involved in this process. Answer this question: is your literature review written in a thematic fashion? Remember, a thematic literature review is providing your sources and your justification for your study sectioned off and organized according to themes. So if you are talking about water consumption in the U.S., then you want to look at bottled water and certain things. You're organizing it by themes, not by sources that you found in what you may have read and such. The next thing you need to be looking at in terms of your structure is, did Did you meet all of my comments about structure provided throughout the draft submission process if it's applicable? Did you double check your APA manual or OWL at Purdue for your organizational structure as per APA requirements? Is it structured? Does it have appropriate headers? If you meant to use a level 1 header, does it have a level 1 header? If you meant to use level 2, did it have level 2? So on and so forth. You're looking at some of the organizational structure of the paper. Make sure to look at your MAC Capstones Guidelines and Handbook that was handed out at our meeting, and our very first meeting when we met to go over everything before the course started. You need to make sure it meets all of those requirements. So the structure is looking at the organizational feel and flow of the paper. The editing for language and style deals with more looking at the nuances, the grammar, and the actual content that you've read. So structure is the overall broad macro perspective of the paper, and the editing for language and style is more of the micro and more level and intimate perspective of your paper. So as you do that, go through and confirm that your paper includes appropriate language and style requirements as per APA. Make sure that if you're utilizing a proper noun, make sure you're using that correctly. I know we know these things, but sometimes we forget as we get into the flow of writing. If I gave you an example of a stellar paper, I know for some of you doing rhetorical criticisms, I gave you an example. This would be a good time to go through and make sure that your paper has some of those things that are in that example. The example was given to you for a reason. Next, double check your APA headers, and did you include at least level 1, 2, and 3 at a minimum? All of your papers should at least have a level 1, which is centered, bold, uppercase, and lowercase for each word. That's the broad content you're going to talk about. That's where you would put introduction. That's where you would put literature review, things like that. Level 2 is flush with bold, upper, and lowercase. That would be your next main topic. Level 3 would be like a subheading of that, and level 4 would be a subheading of level 3, and then so on with level 5. There's no reason at all why your paper at this level of writing should not have at least a level 1, 2, and 3 heading throughout your paper. Level 1, if for example, would state literature review. Level 2 would state your first thematic theme. So if you looked at water consumption in California, level 3 would be a subheading of level 2. So water consumption in Southern California, water consumption in San Bernardino County would be level 4. You see how you're breaking it down further and further. Your organizational structure is coming out. So it flows in the language and style. It doesn't distract from language and style. This is where you're also going to confirm if you have your in-text citations and reference pages appropriately formatted according to APA. Look through your APA manual. Look at the OWL at Purdue. Make sure you know when page numbers are required in a citation and when they're not. If you're confused about that, let me know and I'll give you feedback on that. I have been giving feedback to some of you as we've gone through this process. You need to double check for grammar, syntax, and spelling. So did you use grammatically correct information? Might be a good point to run it through the Smart Thinking tutoring that's free in Blackboard to get some feedback. I can't guarantee that all of them can edit according to graduate level standards, but they can have a basic knowledge of grammar, syntax, and spelling to meet the standards for the particular area that you are looking at. Confirm that you meet the standards of academic and graduate level writing standards. We really, in this sort of writing, minimize the use of personal pronouns. Unless you're writing something from an ethnographic perspective, a personal perspective related to you, you're not going to use words like I, me, my. Make sure if you are referring to job titles, you will only capitalize the job titles if you're including the person's name. So we would say Officer Sandra Romo, that would be capitalized. But if you're just going to say the officer went here, you're not going to capitalize officer. Things like that. These are all things that we know and we're aware of at this point in our academic career, but sometimes as we're writing a paper this massive and expansive, we tend to forget, or we just start getting in the flow of typing and then we can't see the trees from the forest. So keep some of those things in mind as you go through that. Remember, as we are recapping what we're doing this week, you're watching some of the videos, you're submitting your draft, you're meeting with me if you're scheduled to meet with me in week 6. And if you have any questions or anything, let me know. I look forward to interacting with you and getting your final drafts. You should feel very proud. You're at the very end stage of your capstone, and before you know it, you'll be graduating. So you should feel very proud of where you're at. I pray you will have a blessed week, and I'm looking forward to interacting with you.